Open and honest communication with your partner takes a ton of practice. And what we started to recognize and realize was it was twofold, where active listening is a skill set. The ability to sit and actually engage and be present and hear somebody as they're talking is a really, really big skill set that takes a lot of practice. And so we had to bring awareness to that and be like, okay, I need to make sure that I put my phone away. I need to make sure that I'm really present. I'm really engaged. And the only thing that I need to remember and kind of hold in the back of my mind in those moments is tell me more. Tell me more. Just the encouragement of allowing your partner to communicate and express and say more and more and more about what they're experiencing and what they're feeling. So that was a really big component of it. And we started to really practice and implement that with each other. But then we realized that there was another side to it where the active listening part took a lot of practice. And it was something that was like, oh my gosh, hard at first. And it still takes a lot of practice at times. But we needed practice being the talker as well. So it wasn't just the listener that needed practice. It was the talker, because being able to openly express yourself and be able to communicate yourself and be able to say hard things and all of that kind of stuff takes a lot of practice as well. So we have a game that we're going to share with you. And the game specifically is focusing on these two things, right? The ability to openly communicate and express your thoughts and your feelings, as well as be able to sit and actively hear and be present with the person expressing.
Can I speak to that just for a minute before we go on? Because I know there's part of out there that's like, it's not hard to talk. It's not hard to speak your needs, in a sense that some people would think that, but what we're actually talking about is like deep needs, deep conversation. And those can be really, really hard. So, and it doesn't matter if what end of the spectrum that you're on, whether you're somebody that talks a lot or if you're somebody that doesn't speak very much, that keeps things like really wrapped down. Because a lot of times the people that are really speaking a lot are speaking past the big ones. They're speaking past the big things. They're keeping it light. They're moving on. They're not talking about the deep things that are in there. So it gets hidden. And those that aren't speaking, well, obviously they're not speaking. So it goes into so many different levels there. But it is, no matter where you are, it can be really scary to speak about things that you actually need, things that you want that are below the surface, and not things that you have that you feel is safe to express, or in a sense, depending on where you're at, maybe you feel like you've had permission to say. So if you're going and saying things that might rock the boat, even if they won't, even if it's like the silliest, smallest thing, but to you and
right,
to the way
like they will.
You feel like this, if I ask for this thing, then it's going to destroy everything. They're going to hate me. They're going to leave. They're going to flip out. They're going to hurt me. They're going to be violent. Like, there's so many different things that we learned as a kid on how that can come up. And then when we find these things, when we started learning these things as a kid, we tend to choose relationships that reiterate that and keep those going, not just with our partners, but like at work, with our friends. Like so it keeps coming, which means these beliefs get embedded deep, which makes it really, really scary and really hard to talk. So being able to open that space and to start to say things that are really, really scary is a lot of practice and a lot of work for most people. Of course, there's people out there that are secure, that have practiced talking and asking for their needs. They're like, and you might be one of them, and that's amazing. But for the majority, I feel most of us really, really struggle with that. They really, really struggle. So it's a big deal. And it's something that you might think, oh, well, your partner's good about it because they're always talking. So they're always getting their needs. It's me. And inside they're like, I haven't said what I've actually wanted in years because I'm so scared to. Or you think, I got this, so I can't ask for anything else. If I ask for this, I have to be grateful for all of these things, which you do. Like, be grateful, right? But that doesn't mean that anybody's anticipated needs that they've projected onto you wipes out your rights and your ability to have needs that actually you need to communicate. So it's so hard. And I'm sure, like, for most of us, we fall somewhere on that spectrum. So maybe if your first instinct is that doesn't apply, just get curious. And how many, like, do you get resentful? There's a lot of resentments that come up in your partner and in relationships, because they tend to do things that you don't think you like. There's this thing I heard that they do things that you don't think you have the permission to do. You don't think you can do. And so when you're finding yourself being resentful, it's probably because there's a need somewhere in that for you to do that same thing, to ask for that thing, to take that time for yourself, but you don't feel like you can. You might not even recognize it. It might be so far beneath the surface. So if you're like, this doesn't apply to me, it might apply to you. And give it just a minute to play this game that we're going to go into and just practice it and see, what does it bring up?
Right. And
Yeah.
it's important that you think of it like a game too. Like approach it like a game. Approach it as something fun that you get to do together with your partner. And if you do it in that fashion, it makes the process much, much, much easier. And as always, it's something that you're practicing. It's not something that you're perfecting. It's not something that you're going to be really good at in the beginning, most likely, because it's awkward and it's clunky, like Steph just got done explaining. So
Clunkily.
we're going to break it down for you. So if you need a pad or a pencil, does anybody carry those around anymore?
I do. I've got them all over the place.
You can also just listen to this podcast over and over and over again until you got this down. So set aside time to play this game. And all you need is really 30 minutes. And what's important is that you find time where the two of you have zero distractions. The goal is to really be present with each other for 30 minutes. And you'll see in just a minute, it's not like, oh my God, we have to hold that connection for 30 minutes. No, but you need a devoted amount of time where you're stepping into this space together and practicing this skill set and playing this game. So that's the first thing. One big caveat that we highly recommend is that this isn't at the end of the night. You don't try to do this before you go to bed. This isn't something that you're going to save until the end of the day and then try to play this game with each other. Because truthfully, by the time it's, you've gotten the kids to bed, you've dealt with everything that you need to do with the house, with work, all these other kind of issues and things like that. By the time it's, 7, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night and you're getting ready to go to bed, your nervous systems are already kind of fried from the day and you're on the way down, and trying to connect and communicate and express in those moments, especially eventually being able to communicate really hard things, is incredibly challenging. So don't do it at the end of the day. Ideally, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, something along just find a time where you can commit to a half an hour of zero distraction and you're going to practice this game. Next up is you need to make sure that all of your needs are met. You want to make sure that you aren't hungry, that you're not thirsty, that you're not tired, that you don't need to go to the bathroom, that all of those things are kind of taken care of as well so that you can really be present in the moment.
Like, that's a big one. Just those needs are met. Because if you're going into it with, I've got all of these things that I really need to do. I really need to pee. I don't have time for this, but come on, let's just get this. Let's just get it done. You're going into it with an energy that's going to throw it. And again, it's 30 minutes. It's 30 minutes, and it doesn't have to be every day. So just really setting aside that time. Phones are off for 30 minutes. You've taken care of yourself, and then getting ready and have a timer. Have a timer.
Yeah, that's the other really
important thing. You need
important
two timers. You need a 30-minute timer and a second one for a 3 or 5 minute
Let's get
timer.
6 timers. You need 6 timers.
Maybe there's phones that can do two timers at once. Maybe there's ADHD phones. I've got 6 in my head going right now. But seriously, if you you have a plan, it's don't bring your phones in it, but you need to bring your phones in it because you need timers.
Yes. So what's going to happen is you're going to take turns being the talker and being the listener. Mm-hmm. And to start out, you're going to set the timer for 3 minutes. You're just going to do 3-minute rounds. And during that 3 minutes, if you're the talker, that's all you're doing is you're just practicing, communicating, and expressing. And in the beginning, this is going to look like the focus of it is practice communicating and expressing the things that are causing you stress in your life. So that means that you have to start paying attention to those things that you want to talk about, whether it be from your day, whether it be from your week, whether it be the relationship that you're, struggling with. Maybe it's a relationship with your parents or issues that you're having with your kids or coworkers or friends or whatever's causing you stress. This is your opportunity to practice communicating that stress to your partner for 3 minutes. And that's all it is just you expressing and talking and communicating and saying the things that are causing you stress. You really want to, in the beginning as well, this is another really big important part, is you want to hold all of the, like, this isn't the opportunity to vent about your partner to your partner. So if there's some issues in your relationship and things that need to be brought up and talked about, this isn't the round for that. We'll talk about later on when that is appropriate. But in the beginning, when you're just practicing this, reserve that conversation about what your issues are with your partner for a later time, because the whole goal is to start developing the ability to communicate and express in a healthy way, as well as in a connected way. One of the really big things that happens when you start talking like this is you have to start taking the conversation from out of your head, meaning I'm not just communicating to you my thoughts about what's taking place in my life, but I'm practicing communicating to you my feelings about what's taking place in my life. This is the thing that took place and happened, and this is what it caused me to feel. This is how I'm feeling about that relationship with the kids, or the situation that's going on at work, or the stress that I have about this in my life. This is the feeling behind those experiences. That's what you're going to be working towards. But very first round, set the timer for 3 minutes and just talk. And then the listener obviously does that. They just listen for 3 minutes. And the goal is to be actively engaged and present with your partner as they're communicating. And this is kind of one of those things that's hard to kind of model in a sense. Active listening a lot of times isn't like, I'm not talking, right? I'm not saying, oh yeah, I'm not really doing anything other than making eye contact with you, nodding my head, being present with you. If it's appropriate at times, there might be some sort of reaction to what you're saying. But by and large, I'm just hearing the words that you're communicating, hearing the feeling, the emotion, taking that information in and just being present with it. I'm not thinking about what I'm going to say. I'm not thinking about a response. I'm not fixing anything, right?
That's a big one.
Do you want to speak more to that?
I do. That's a big one, because while they're talking, a lot of times we want to fix things for our partners, or we have ideas about how we would handle it and how we think our partner then should be handling these things. And we want to let them know in a very kind, loving, helpful way of, if they did this, have they thought of this? If they tried this, they need to say this. They need to have a boundary here. Your boss can fuck off. All the ways it comes up that we want to help. And that is just like,
That's not the time for this.
That is not the time.
That's not what this game's about.
That's not what they need. That's not what they're asking for. It's just about being heard. So it's not your job to fix anything. It's not your job to save it for later and be like, hey, that thing you said, this is like again, that's another time if your partner comes to you and wants help. There's a whole bunch to go here. So if you're a fixer and you have all these ideas, and if they would just do it your way and you're like coming through, this is a really, really great opportunity for you to practice just listening.
Yes, keeping your mouth shut.
Right.
And just listening.
When you can do that for your partner without jumping in and trying to fix things, over time, what they start to learn is that you're a safe place, somebody that they can speak to, that they're not having like, now they're doing it wrong and they can't say this to you because they're letting you down by not doing it this way, or they just wanted to be heard in that space and they have to keep that under wraps, or, oh, now you're freaking out and stressed out and so they're scared. It really cultivates a space of where they feel safe talking to you. And chances are that's something that you've been wanting and maybe even asking your partner for. Talk to me. Tell me what's going on. But when they do, you're jumping in with all of your stuff. Now, this doesn't mean that you're wrong. If you're like, oh my gosh, that's me. You're not doing anything wrong. That's just the style of communication that you have been taught and that you've been practicing for a really long time. And this is just giving you another tool to practice communicating in a way that might open up and create some more space and connection in your relationship. So what we're saying here isn't a way to beat yourself up. If you're naturally inclined to doing that, is like, oh, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try this with my partner.
Yes. So the listener just listens for those 3 minutes. After the 3 minutes is up and the timer goes off, then you just take a break. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, just kind of like
your body.
Decompress, take a drink, just take a little shift in energy, and then you switch. And the listener becomes the talker and the talker becomes the listener. And you just repeat. It's your opportunity then to express what's been coming up for you and what you've been going through. And it's really important that the first round, you're focusing on negative things. You're focusing on stresses. You're focusing on those things that are causing you a lot of heartache and emotions and fear and everything that's kind of coming up in your life. Mm-hmm. And then the 3 minutes ends again. Take a little break, a little breather, a reset. And that's round one.
When it's your turn to go, if you're the second one going, that's not for you to then, again, how the first one wasn't about unloading on you, the things that are frustrated. It's not now you unloading about all the things that they just said and how that's like, you've got to talk about your own day, your own week, the own things that are coming up,
That's
and
so
not
important.
have it like punished in a way.
I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Like there's the reason that we created this game was because there's layers to the reasons behind it all. By focusing on your own lived experience of what you're going through, it's literally doing this thing where you're communicating and connecting about your life. It's like when your kids come home from school and you say, "Hey, how was your day?" And they're like, "Fine." And they're like, "What did you do?" "Nothing." And then the conversation's over. Right? We don't get a lot of feedback from the people that we're in relationships with a lot of times because truthfully, people have a hard time communicating. So it's important to not just, like you said, piggyback on your partner's share, right? Whatever they were talking about, be like, "Yeah, you know, that really does piss me off too. Your boss is a really big jerk." So that's a really important thing. I'm glad you brought that up. That's round one. Round two, you flip back. Right? The listener, no, the talker becomes the listener and vice versa. Except this time you want to talk about the things that went well this week, the things that you're excited about, the things that you're looking forward to, the things that you're happy about. So the round two is all the good stuff that's going on in your life and what that is bringing up for you and what that is making you feel. You set the timer again for 3 minutes, express, and listen and listen and listen. So that's it. Those 2 rounds, first negative, second positive, 3 minutes each, both talking and listening. And over time, when you practice this, again, the goal is to get out of your head and into your body. It's less about what you think and more about what you're feeling and learning how to communicate that with your partner in a deep, connected way. So that's like phase 1 of the Tell Me More game. The other part of it is after you feel confident in this space, after you feel like you've gone through it a couple of times and you're like, seems like we're doing a pretty good job. We're talking about some harder and harder things and getting better and better at being present with each other. There's 2 things that you can do. You can either up the time, right? You can go from 3-minute rounds up to 5-minute rounds or longer if it feels appropriate. But what we would really encourage you is to now start directing those conversations as opposed to your everyday stresses and good things and bad things that are coming up for you. Now you get to bring the things that are coming up or the things that you're dealing with in your relationship. Now's the opportunity to bring those things to this space because you have a skill set now that you've been practicing for communication to bring those things up and communicate about those things. Now, it's like anything else where you get good at one thing and then you grow and expand and start something else and try to build upon it. You're going to kind of suck at this part. You're going to fail again. It's going to feel wonky again. It's going to feel hard again. And that's just simply because it comes with there's deeper emotions obviously involved in it. When we start talking about the harder things in regards to our partner and in regards to our relationship, that's going to trigger both of you. And it's going to be harder to communicate your thoughts and your feelings, both from the talking perspective. And it's going to be harder to listen as well, because when they start talking about some of the really hard things that they're going through in relation to you and your relationship, of course, it's going to activate you and trigger you. But again, you have the process, right? It's no different where you're going to set the timer for 3 minutes and the talker gets to talk, except this time we're focusing on the relationship and what's coming up for you in the relationship and what's hard for you about the relationship. And the listener just fucking listens. That's all you have to do in those moments is tell me more. Just tell me more. And you can repeat that self too. Like when we practice this, when we go through this, I will literally go through the process in my head where I will think like, well, you don't understand why I was doing that. Let me explain why that was happening.
Right.
Like
Those defenses kick in.
All of those coping mechanisms and all those things will start to kick in my own body and in my own brain. And I'm out of the active listening and more in that defensive mode. Mm-hmm. And so I will just tell me more. I will repeat it in my head so that I'm reminding myself that's all I have to focus on. I just need to tell me more, babe. Tell me more. I just want to be present with you as you express. And all I have to do is listen and be as present with you in those moments as I possibly can. Yeah. So that's the Tell Me More game. What else do you want to add to it? Anything else, babe?
And just what you just said right there. It can be really hard sometimes.
That's so hard.
Right. And then there's times it's like I'm really afraid. And that's usually what's coming up when I get defensive is I'm afraid. And so I have to remind myself, I'm like, this isn't about you. Even if you're telling me something about me, it's not about me in a sense of a way that not like I don't need accountability, but this isn't about how I need to now tell you what you're feeling is wrong and change your feeling. Oh, you just need to see it my way because what you're feeling about me is actually wrong, which is saying your feelings are wrong. And what you should be feeling is this. That's like really unhealthy. That's hurtful. So I have to remind myself, this isn't about me. You are telling me how you feel. This is how you feel. And I need to hear how you are feeling. And that helps me. That helps.
Yeah, we forgot to mention the importance of I language, where you're speaking from that perspective of I am feeling this way, I experience this I language rather than you language. So if I was to communicate an issue like I did with Stephanie that we talked about earlier, right? Where I was feeling this way based off of the interaction that we had and the things that were said, but I was feeling this, like this emotion was coming up in me, and this is what my experience was of it.
This is the experience, and this is how I felt. Not you did this and made me feel this way. This is what happened. This is how it made me feel. Yeah. This is what I'm experiencing.
Yeah,
because,
so important.
Like all of that, yeah.
So to recap, make sure you're setting aside time to do this where you're not distracted. It's not right before you go to bed when you're already tired and worn out. You've got all of your needs met. Nobody's hungry. Nobody's tired, right? This is an opportunity for 30 minutes of real deep connection with your partner. Set a timer for 3 minutes. Round 1 is the hard stuff and the negative stuff. Round 2 is the positive stuff. That positive round is also super critical when you're going through those relationship conversations. When you start navigating those conversations, it's really easy to spiral out into the negative aspects of what's going on in your relationship. And that positive round is so important. And that's why you do the negative round first and you end on the positive round, because you want to end the experience in that positivity and reminding each other why you actually love each other and why you're trying to do this thing. So don't forget how critical that positive round is. And we cannot express the importance of setting a timer. Like you're practicing this in the realm of when you first start this process, make sure you're practicing about those everyday life experiences and getting really comfortable about communicating the emotion behind your life to your partner before you move on to the relationship issues, because you're going to need that practice in those conversations about your relationship. And again, that 3-minute timer when you start the relationship conversations and go through those rounds is super critical, because it's really easy to get lost in those conversations and just start venting to each other for longer and longer and longer. And then next thing you know, the talker is just trauma dumping all of this stuff. And the listener is like, tell me more for like 10 minutes. And it's really, really, it's not healthy. It's not healthy at all.
And then it's going to be way harder for you to try and go into that space again, to try again, because you're like, last time we did that, oh, that turned into a whole, I'm not really, turns out I'm too busy. My needs are not met. I am not willing to do this because it's so hard.
It is so hard.
The timers are super important for that, because it's giving you that space, and it's giving you also the opportunity to mess up, because you're going to mess up. So with that timer coming, if you started to like off tracks, you can even acknowledge that, like, I'll try better next time. And there you go. And it's not another 3 minutes of you explaining how you're going to try better. Just like you catch it. You're learning how to play the game. You're learning how to do this. You're going to mess it up. And it's okay that you make mistakes because you keep trying. And because you're in a safe window of these 3-minute timers in a 30-minute chunk, even if you mess up the entire time, it's 30 minutes, which means it's going to feel safer for you to try again next time that you're ready to step into that. You might even have a laugh about how you handled it at the beginning and how hard it was. And there might be times like your brain just goes, boop, blank. You're trying to, and you can't think of anything. And that's where you really challenge yourself. It's not like, pass, I can't think of anything. You're going to find something to talk about. If you're sitting there and it's like the good topics, for instance, you can be like, well, the grass was pretty today. I saw the sun come out. You just like almost free write and just think of words to say to trigger your brain into filling that space, to open your throat chakra in a sense, to open the ability to speak, because sometimes it feels like your throat clenches down. And if you're like, I like these pants, they're soft, you can just start going, and then pretty soon you're connecting with that, and then you can start flowing. It's that initial getting words out. For me, that might not apply to you, but for me, it's really hard. My throat will just literally start seizing up, and I have to start saying what I can, because it feels like everything shuts down and I can't get a word out. So it's a big practice for me, and maybe that'll help you if you get stuck there too.
The practice part is also just incredibly important. It takes a ton of practice. And as always, like the more you practice something, the better you're going to get at it and the easier you're going to get. And then you get to the point where it's a natural way of communicating with each other, where you're actively in these spaces all the time and able to drop into hard conversations and moments and being able to be present with your partner. And like we just talked about at the beginning of the episode, being able to help each other through some really difficult times when needed and when things come up, because obviously things come up and that's going to happen. So
we were meant to be.